we go. Yes.
Okay,
Okay, good.
all right,
So,
all right.
well, I'm a senior at the University of Arkansas, and
Uh-huh.
I'm studying computer engineering and physics.
Mhm.
And I really, really wanted to interview you
Thank you.
because you've done stuff in academics and industry and for the government.
Mhm.
And at this point, I'm not necessarily sure where
Which
I wanna,
way you-
yeah.
which way you wanna go? Okay.
So I mean, even though it's like for purpose of having your experiences in the video and everything, I still wanted to kind of get
Okay.
your advice and stuff
Okay.
like that. And I kind of tried to make some questions
Okay.
in case I
Are
get
you
confused.
planning to go to graduate school, or
Yes,
is that?
yes.
Okay, good, so that's a,
I'm going to Illinois, University of Illinois.
good,
Urbana,
that's an
so
excellent school.
that's
Going
the
in
plan.
computer science or
Mechanical engineering.
mechanical engineering,
Yeah.
very good indeed.
I'm trying to find like a middle ground.
We just hired, as of this week, a new mechanical engineering, female faculty member,
Really?
who is, postdocing at Purdue. So we're
Yeah.
pleased with her.
Okay, so I read a lot about you online, and I didn't wanna just repeat everything that I read and show
Right,
you how
right,
great,
right.
I learned it and everything. So I wanted to ask you some questions
Sure.
that wouldn't be
Okay.
necessarily usual questions.
That's okay.
Okay, so, since you studied chemistry, right? I mean, you started with home economics, and then you turned.
For one semester.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
then
that's-
transferred to chemistry,
It's
that's
probably
right.
like you weren't sure what you want to do, and then.
No, my father wanted to be sure that I registered for something that I could make a living with if I needed to.
Oh, okay.
And in those days, home economics teachers got more money than anybody else.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. Okay, so I wanted to ask you what was it about chemistry that you found interesting, and
Okay, that's very straightforward. First of all, it was partially the fact of one of the faculty members who taught freshman chemistry, and I just liked the way he taught it, I liked what he was doing. But the biggest reason that I changed, I liked the laboratory a lot. I liked the hands-on laboratory stuff.
and since then, what has like you could start liking something and then go into it, and then maybe it doesn't intrigue you as much, or it doesn't wake up your curiosity, or so.
No, it actually, as far as I'm concerned, got better the further you went.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay. I wanted to ask you, comparing to what your opinions were in college. I know it was like a long time ago, but comparing to then, what did you think at that time was your main goal, kind of in life, and what do you think it is now, and how it has changed?
Well, when I was a student, this was a very long time ago, and so two things. One was that I did decide I wanted to go to graduate school because you got to do, all kinds of really exciting kinds of things. And then I got married during graduate school and actually had my first son while I was a graduate student. So my husband was a physics major. And at that time, the University of Arkansas did not give a PhD in physics, only a master's degree, which he took. So we wanted to go somewhere where he could finish his PhD. And so we had an opportunity, I had an opportunity to go to Shell Oil in Houston, and he could have gone to Rice. But I took the opportunity to go to LSU as a faculty member because I thought with a young child you'd have a better chance of managing your own schedule. And sure enough, that turned out to be true, actually. Because you can write papers at night and all of these other kinds of things. So really, in a way, that was what drove the difference. Right.
Like, for example, for me now, when I'm thinking about my future, I have some set, like, I know I want to do something that would change specific things in the world today. Like, I know I don't want to go ahead and work with, I don't know, medicine, or, that's for now. And, like, for you at that time, what was it that kind of was something you were going for?
Well, first of all, I like to teach. I enjoy students. And I particularly like to mentor graduate students. And going to LSU, I could have graduate students very quickly. So it was just a really neat place to be. And so I never regretted that. I enjoyed that very much. I enjoyed being in the university.
Is that because, I mean, the teaching part, is that because of your parents, because they were
No,
teachers?
well, my
or?
parents were teachers, but no, it was just the idea of being able to sort of make your own decisions, and in the university you still can do a lot of that.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, well that brings me to my next one.
Okay.
What are the main advantages and disadvantages of being in academics and being in industry role
Okay.
and being in a position in government?
Well,
Like
you know, they have a lot of, first of all, they have a lot of things in common. They probably have more things in common than most people realize. But they also have very different climates and environments, and if you like, culture is more
Yeah.
than anything else. But you know, in the university, you've got to be pretty self-starting. You've got to, you got to carve out your own research program and attract your own students and that sort of thing. And nobody provides you with much of anything. And faculties are relatively competitive. So it's, in today's world, and it was then too, to some extent, but even more so today, the competition to get tenure and that sort of thing is pretty fierce. So it's a interesting kind of a time. And so if you like that sort of competitive environment where, you know, you really get to move at your own pace, so to speak, then academics is really very good for you, and particularly if you like students and you like to teach. The industry has, it's interesting about going, particularly with either engineering or chemistry degrees, both of which hire a lot of PhDs in the industry, versus some other areas where they don't. The difference in many ways is that, you know, your industry job, certainly when you begin, is much more of an 8 to 5 kind of a job. In the universities, it's never 8 to 5 if you really do well.
Yeah.
But it's a bit more of an 8 to 5 in the industry. And the competition is there, but it's of a different kind. And in today's world, there's a lot of pluses put on people who can work well in teams and, you know, and design something as a whole rather than just an individual piece. And you clearly have to be working on something that the company is interested in doing. But it can be extremely rewarding. I've managed a lot in the industry, and it can be a very rewarding opportunity. But it is just it's a different culture. And in the university, you know, if you can work your way up to tenure and that sort of thing, the stability is more than in today's industry, because you know, the industry today, a lot of shuffling and things going on, as you know, and so, you know, you can you never have what we might call a permanent job, and that's certainly more true now than it was when I started in the business, for sure. But and the government is one of those things that I enjoyed my time in the government. I would not want to be there for forever. Because there's a lot of restrictions, there's a lot of bureaucracy and the way people get promoted and that sort of thing. But if you get in the right spot, it can be very rewarding because you actually can make things happen.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. It's kind of negative because you have to watch exactly what you're doing and how you do it and all your moves, but then you also have a lot of power from that position.
Like I say, if you get in the right position, it can be, you can actually make things happen that you really think are very worthwhile. But the point is, you can do very worthwhile things in any one of the three. And in terms of the people that you interact with, you know, getting along with other people is about the same. It's you know, it's not that different, frankly, because I've I've managed people in all three sections. And, you know, there's differences. Managing faculty is somewhat more, you have to be more subtle about how you do that than it is in the industry, because in the industry you can hire and fire much more quickly if you need to. And in the government, you can't hire and fire at all for the most part, particularly people for civil service. But there are some excellent people in the government, and you find some really good folks going on.
So from all the jobs that you had until now, I mean, it's kind of not. I mean, you can't really separate any because they're so different and everything. But which one did you enjoy the most?
Well, first of all, I did enjoy being a professor. There's no question about that. But when I was offered this job in the industry, I was a full professor, had a chair, had a really good research group. So people have always thought I was crazy leaving that to go to the industry. But they offered me a job as vice president of research in a company that was made its money by licensing technology. And that means that you have to have the technology first, and it has to be the best, because nobody will pay you a license for second-run stuff. And I must say that I probably enjoyed that job more than any I have ever had. And then I got promoted up to run the full. This was a subsidiary of the company, and then I got promoted up to be the vice president for the whole big company. And although I enjoyed that, it was just an enormous pressure job. And I don't mind that, and I kind of thrive on it. But in terms of just sheer enjoyment, I really enjoyed the one at UOP probably better than anything else.
So, I mean, it's kind of like a job where you have to kind of have a sense of if something is going to be good in the future or grow.
Yeah.
So, in that sense, how would you say, like, the first time when you interacted with an actual computer, like, what was your thinking?
Oh, well, you know, I started back when computers were not that, you know, I'm a slide rule person.
Yeah.
Okay, the computer I knew was a slide rule. And the first computers that came out were, you know, the calculators came first, and there were some fairly sophisticated calculators. And then the computers that came out in the early days, we had one at University LSU in New Orleans that would have filled this room and probably had about the capacity that a really first-class Texas Instrument pocket calculator had.
So, did you think at that time that, you know, like sometime today people come up with some kind of technology, new technology, and everybody's judging it. Everybody's going, nah, that's not a good idea. That doesn't look like.
No, it was clear from the very beginning these things were going to be very, very useful. And the main thing they did was that they took a lot of the drudgery out of doing research, because you could get them to, you know, to take all your data and calculate all your stuff. And in fact, when I was doing some of my best research in university, I had a physics undergraduate who was an excellent computer guy, and he actually wrote most of the software for the kinds of things that we did. And the only problem was, this was back before the days people paid much attention, and he never documented anything. Mm-hmm. So you had to get him to refix it if you needed to change it.
Wow. Yeah, like I'm really interested in, well, I've been doing my honors thesis on quantum computers, and it's like it's
fascinating.
It's really fascinating, but it seems like a lot of people are just kind of like, that's not gonna happen. It's too hard to happen.
My guess is it will happen, and the form that it takes, I think, is perhaps still out, because there are people who are trying to do molecular systems where you get a molecule itself that goes on and off, and in fact, some people are doing some really nice work on that now. So I think the only issue really is which one of those formats will end up being the best bet, whether the nanotube kinds of things or the molecular kinds of things. But I'm pretty sure they'll get there, frankly. There's nothing, if you think about it, there's nothing in the physics that says you cannot.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if the physics doesn't say you cannot, chances are somebody will do it.
I'm glad you think like me. Okay. Okay. So, if you were to go back to university now, would you go with the same path, or would you do something else?
I probably would go pretty close to the same thing. In today's world, with the opportunities that you would have, I might have gone into chemical engineering instead of chemistry, but that would have been probably the only difference.
So there is no science that has taught chemistry yet?
No. Like I say, I might have done chemical engineering instead of chemistry, but I've essentially turned into an engineer over the years anyway. But no, I'm still fascinated by it because. And the reason is pretty straightforward. If you think about it, there's nothing that moves forward unless somebody does the chemistry.
That's true.
That's true of these quantum mechanical devices. Somebody's got to do the chemistry. And if everything we do has a chemical base somewhere. And so I find that fascinating. So like I say, no, I wouldn't switch.
Yeah, that's like the reason I like physics is because it explains everything that happens. So kind of, I guess,
exactly.
They can't separate it, I guess.
Well, actually, mechanical engineering is kind of a good fit for people who like physics. So.
Yeah. I'm hoping.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, because I'm
in some ways, mechanical engineering is taking everything you know about physics and doing very practical things with it.
Yeah,
it's not necessarily inventing new physics, but it's being able to understand the physics that's there up to the present time, and then figuring out really cool things to do with that.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, but I mean, you still can't. There's always, you can't lean on everything that you know as a true, absolute truth.
That's
so
true. Yeah.
never know.
You never know.
Okay, so my friend was saying how this is a pretty pessimistic question, but I don't think so, because I think every time if you look at the world and you can't see anything that's wrong with it, then you can't really change anything.
Right.
That's in my opinion.
I agree. Oh, there's lots of things wrong with the world.
Yeah, so my question is, if you could change two things, it doesn't matter if it's technology-wise or any, in any other area, what would you change?
Well, the first one is really, it's almost trivial, but it still is a really important one, I think. I think the thing you would change, if you could, is to work it out so that nations and people could disagree amicably. Okay. That could actually disagree without shooting each other. And that's true at a personal level.
Agree to disagree.
Yeah, agree to disagree. And I guess, the thing that I believe more than anything else that makes for a better world is tolerance. And that's essentially what we're talking about. It's not that you should disagree. And I love a good argument. That's not a problem. And I don't mind, critiques and that sort of thing. But I want to feel like that however we come out, whether you agree with me or you don't, that you don't go away feeling like you want to shoot me in the morning. So if there was one thing you could change, it seems to me that would be it, is to try to teach the world some tolerance. We've made some progress over the last 2,000 years. Not enough.
Yeah.
And there are days when I think we're going backwards.
Yeah, probably. Well, I think that happens just because of lack of knowledge. Because when people don't know what to say back, they respond.
Well, that's part of it, but it's a long history of mankind in a way, and I doubt the psychologists understand exactly why that humans behave that way. But it's a culture that's built in, because if you have children that are brought up in a household where they're intolerant to other people, then more than likely those children will be intolerant. How do you teach people to have respect for one another? May I answer that?
Yeah, you can. If you want me, I can turn
No,
off.
no, not at all.
Okay.
Let's see who it is. Hello? Yes. No, that's okay, Jack. Okay. 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 I did indeed, right. And you go down, and you remember that alley had a 90-degree turn in it. Uh-huh. Yep. That's it. That's it. Yeah, I believe it. No, it's not the first one. It's down a little bit. The house, yeah, the house next door to ours, Jack, had those ghastly lions that looked off the back fence. Yeah, you know, so. Uh-huh. No, this one, ours had a gate and did not have a patio at that time anyway. Right. Yeah, so you need to go on down a little while, piece, I think. Yeah, yeah. And, no, that's correct, that's correct. In fact, I think it was the house next to the last one, Jack, I think. Yep. Yeah, that's it. Right, but yeah, that's probably it. Yeah, and I think the house is still yellow. Uh-huh. Yeah, if you look out, if you're standing right in front of our house, and you looked across the street and went one house to the right. That's it. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Okay. Oh, but that's it. Sounds like a good afternoon. Right. Okay. All right. Take care. Bye-bye. That's my brother-in-law, and he's wandering around in Georgetown looking for the house I used to live in Washington, D.C.
Oh.
Right. But you know, like I say, if I could change anything, that would probably be it, to tell you the truth. It's how do you go about teaching tolerance to the whole world? I don't know, but it would be a nice thing to try to do. And it's not that nobody has to change what they want to believe or whatever. It's just they have to be tolerant of other people believing something else.
Not pushing their opinion.
That's correct. That's correct. But
well, I think with the globalization and everything, maybe
we'll see.
Hoping.
It's you know, there are days when it seems like we're going backwards, but we'll see
Because,
over
yeah.
time. And certainly it's improved, you know, over 2,000 years. But you always live in the present. You wish it were better.
Yeah. Another thing that I think about a lot when I think about what I would like to do and what's the point of doing, you know, like new things and new technology and new science, is that it seems like it's something. Well, I can't do anything else because that's the only thing I like to do.
Right.
But it seems sometimes that it's worthless because people just take it and like whatever you do. If there is a really good side to it, there is always a really bad
There
side
always
to it.
is. Yeah,
And it seems there is always going to be somebody who's going to take that bad side and abuse it. And
there is, and you know, you can't let that make you decide not to do the good things. And a lot of people believe that if there's a possibility for a bad side, then you shouldn't do it. But if you took that track, we would have made no progress in the last 2,000 years because there's always the potential for doing bad things. And technology just makes bad things worse than they might have been if I didn't have the technology. But if you look at what technology has done, though, in terms of the fact that if you look at the last 100 years, women have come from the place where they worked harder than men, in the sense that washing and cooking and all that with no appliances and all this sort of thing was really very hard work. And so the ability to have labor-saving devices and and to have medical care. You know, and all the technology's brought all of that, and what you wish is that you could begin to see that technology permeate in areas where there is none today.
Well, it's obvious that there is good sides to today comparing to,
Oh, no
I
question
don't know,
about
50
that.
years
no
ago. But,
question about that.
but is there anything that is maybe was better like
50 years
years
ago?
ago and
You know, there's probably not much, although nostalgia always says there was.
yeah.
But if you look at it objectively, there probably wasn't very much. The only possible difference would have been with the fact that people were somewhat closer to each other, because it's true that the information technology can make people pretty independent and not very interactive. But if you look at lifespan, you look at standard of living, you look at, you know, any of that, the majority of it is better today. And you know, I could argue that some of the entertainment today is worse, particularly some of the violent stuff. But, you know, people...
Games are better.
Yeah, people had their own, you know, bad, violent stuff back then too.
Yeah.
So it's a different era and it's a different magnitude, maybe a different manifestation, but not that different really. And I think the world has improved. My mother had a long saying about that. You know, during the 60s, there was a lot of the people who decided that really the world should go back to, you know, more fundamental things and, you know, cook your stuff over a wood fireplace and all that. And it was her opinion that for all of those people that wanted to go back to the good old days, as she said, they could go, but she had no intentions of going with them because she had been there and she didn't choose to go back. And I think if you're really objective, you'd come out like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, with all the technology age that we're talking about and everything, do you think that young people today have way more responsibility on them than young people like 30 years ago? Because now they know so much more things, and it seems like when you know something, you have to do something about it. You can't just ignore it.
Well, I don't really think so. I think that if you think about it, students who came out of school at the beginning of the Cold War, and you still had major threats of nuclear wipeout, that sort of thing, responsibilities were pretty high, right? You know, how are you going to respond to that and so forth? So I don't think the responsibilities really are that much more difficult. They are still very high. But what has changed, I think, is that students today have so many more options than we did. Because we had, you know, our options were fixed by place and the people you knew and family size and that sort of thing. And today, the options are just essentially unlimited. And in some ways, that's a handicap because you have to make choices amongst all of those. And you know, when you've only got 2 or 3 options,
Yeah.
it's a lot easier to make a decision.
That is. But what I was trying kind of to go to is, for example, like, I can't go on every day living like, you know, like spending money, living normal, being happy that, you know, I'm in the safe place where I know that, like, for example, it's so easy for me to get information about, for example, people in Africa
Correct.
living like this or like that, or
Yeah.
in Middle East, or
Agreed.
you know. So it just seems like I have that. I mean, I don't know how it was, you know, for you or for my parents, but I just had that feeling like of guilt that I'm here. You know, I mean, I'm educating myself, and that's good, and that's the only way to help somebody is if you actually know something
Right.
more than them. You can't just go and
Right.
like, oh, I'll help you, but I don't know anything, you know.
Right.
But it's still like, how do you deal with that, you know? Like,
Well, I don't know. That's a very difficult question. And different people do deal with it differently, and some people don't feel it at all. I think people who think and who have the opportunity to see what goes on do. The issue is to finally come to terms with what you can do. Because there's not much point in worrying about things that you cannot do. But one of the things, it seems to me, that knowing what we know these days is that you absolutely have to be active in voting and understanding what people's platforms are, and voting for people who you believe are going to actually act on the kinds of things that you think are important.
Yeah.
And so many of the young people today have just essentially blanked out. You know, they don't bother to vote, they don't know what's being said, they don't know who stands for what. And I find that pretty I find that pretty dreadful. Yeah, that's pretty disturbing. And then, you know, once you finish your education and that sort of thing, you have all kinds of opportunities to test some of it out if you want. My son, for example, my younger son, spent 2.5 years in the Peace Corps, both he and his wife. They got married right after he finished his degree in architecture, and they spent 2.5 years in the Philippines, down on a little bitty island called Siquijor in the south of the Philippines. And because of his background, he designed an ice house for the fishermen, so they could figure out how to ice down their fish, and then they could move them into the inland, into the mainland, and sell them when they weren't able to before.
Yeah.
And she started a library and wrote all of her friends all over the United States to send them books, and so she stacked it, you know, put this library together and whatever. So there are real opportunities for doing things like that. On the other hand, I have some people here who are faculty members who are extremely concerned about students, work very hard with poor students. You know, that's a huge contribution. So it doesn't have to be, you know, in any particular place. It's just somewhere where you feel like you're making a difference and you're making a contribution that you can do.
Yeah. And I mean, by teaching, you're making a
that's
big
correct.
difference.
And particularly if you are willing to encourage and help all students. You know, it's easy to help the good ones, but it's more difficult to take the time and effort to bring along some of those who haven't had the same advantages. But I think that, you know, that's a huge contribution to society.
Do you still teach? I'm not.
No, I don't. I haven't taught since I've been in this job because it's been such a building at the college that it just hasn't been enough time to do it. I would like to, but I do as much. The real problem is I have to do as much stuff outside the college as I do inside, and you just don't get time to. And not only that, but you don't want to teach a class if you can, you know, be there half-time or something.
Yeah.
That's a big disruption.
Yeah, it's better not to do it than just.
Yeah, that's a big disruption for students. Yeah.
Well, if you could invest in a specific technology today, what would it be?
That's an excellent question. You're talking about an emerging technology, I suppose.
Yes.
If you're willing to wait 20 years to get paid off, there's certainly some nanotechnologies that I would invest in. And interestingly enough, there's some genomic technologies that I would invest in. I think both of those are going to have some winners as time goes on. I think they're going to get utilized in all kinds of ways that we probably can't even envision today. Yeah.
I think I'm good with questions.
Okay.
So unless you had anything.
No, I think you're doing great. I'd be really pleased to see you go to Illinois. I think you'll enjoy it. It's a big school, lots of people. And hopefully, the main thing when you get there is to look for a major professor who has some empathy with students, and who is doing work that you would like to do. Because some faculty really don't have as good a mentoring capability as others. Talk to the graduate students before you make a decision.
Well,
they know more than anybody about what they're doing.
I have already kind of decided the professor that I'm working with, and that's mainly on the area that he's researching. That's kind of how I was going.
Which area are you?
Well, he's doing some bioengineering, but what I'm more interested in is they have this research group which is called Water on Campus or something similar to that, and they're basically trying to make different technology for clearing the water in places where like it's not drinkable and kind of like
Is that a mechanical engineering group?
It's
That's
a mechanical mixed with all the other
Yeah, it's gotta be
engineering.
civil
Yeah.
mixed in there somewhere
Yeah.
too. Okay.
But I mean, that's like you were saying earlier with the all choices and
Yeah.
everything. There's a lot of things I'm interested in,
This is-
and it's just
Well, I would encourage you to do one thing. I would not make a final commitment for a semester.
okay.
You don't have to, you know, and I wouldn't, because you're gonna get up there and that place has so many great things going on
Yeah.
that you may find something that really turns you on. So I would certainly paddle around and talk to graduate students and that sort of
Nose
thing
around.
before I made a final commitment. Although that sounds like a great place to be, but like I say, I definitely would do that.
Okay. Well, I just
Because remember, you're gonna be with that for a very long time.
yeah. Well, I don't want to do, I don't want to work on any technology that's just gonna help somebody who's sitting at home be more lazy and
Yeah, I understand.
you know what I mean? Like it has to be something that helps in some way, like improve the life, not just make it
Right.
easier.
But for example, some of the work they're doing some really elegant work up there on microelectronics and nanotechnology electronics. Some of that is just mind-boggling because it will go in everything
Yeah.
at some point. But so like I say, just don't make a decision until you've had a chance to wander around the department.
Thanks for
It's
your
a
advice.
big department, lots of professors. I don't know how many they have, but I imagine mechanical engineering probably has 50, 60 faculty.
Yeah, they sent me
Yeah.
a prospect.
I would think it's 50 or
There's
60
a lot,
faculty members,
yeah.
right? So I'd certainly, sort of paddle around, talk to graduate students, see what other folks are doing, what things are really fun, walk through people's labs, talk to them.
Yeah. Well, it seems like when you're at such a place with like so many opportunities, it would be a shame just to go with one and close your eyes.
I absolutely agree. That's my point. You just really need to at least, first of all, you'll be much happier with the decision you make
Yeah.
because you'll decide that really is something I want to do. And the problem is you won't even know all of the opportunities till you get there. There's just no way of having any kind of comprehension of all the things that we're doing and talking about there.
Well,
I think you'll have fun.
I was supposed to go during the summer, but I'm going home. I'm not from United States.
Where are you from?
I'm from Montenegro.
Montenegro. Excellent, excellent.
So,
I have we have a faculty member in applied science who's from Romania.
oh really?
Yeah, and it's not too far.
Yeah. No, it's
Yeah.
close.
Yeah. Well, you should go home for the summer. I agree
Yeah.
with that.
I need my batteries recharged.
Well, not only that, but you have family there, and I suspect
Yeah.
it's just worthwhile to do it. Okay, very good.
Well, thank you so
This is
much.
my pleasure. I've enjoyed very much talking to you. Okay,
Thank you.
and good luck.
Thanks. I'm sorry for taking your time.